Everyone. In an effort to get everybody in here, we're going to start in about 5 more minutes. Okay, so if you can just hold tight, it's going to be well worth it. All right, thanks for being here.
Good morning, Unity of Boulder. It's an honor to be here this morning. My name is Robert or Bob Castellino. I'm an author and book publishing coach. I've been working with Jack on his new book, Escape to Another Reality. It's the book that you've learned about online and also in the lobby today. Jack tells us an amazing story about the origins of his awakening and beginnings and challenges through his book to become a Unity minister and escape to another reality. I hope you enjoy the presentation today. Have a great morning. Oh, two very important things. Those of you who are watching online, right down here, you can click and get a copy of your book online. That's not you all here sitting in the audience. But I have something for you all in the audience, okay? This is really important. You may have questions about how Jack got here. Don't worry, I'm not the one you're going to be asking, but I'll be helping you ask those questions at the luncheon after service today. So hold your questions, come on down for the book signing, but hold your questions for the luncheon, and we'll be glad to answer everything you have to ask him. Thank you so much for being here today.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Unity of Boulder. My name is Mike Shadle. I'm the administrator here. For those of you who don't know me, I take care of the building and make sure everything's working properly, but I also deal with rentals. So if you are ever looking for space to rent for anything, a birthday party, a meeting, and any event at all, please call the office, ask for Mike, and I'll set you up. I got a few announcements here of upcoming events. The big thing we have going on right now is our holiday choir. Our choir is it's already up and running, but we are still welcoming anyone who would like to join it at all. You don't have to have any skill. If you've ever sung a Christmas carol and had a good time doing it, that is literally the entire skill set that you need to join this choir. So please, all you have to do is show up this Thursday at 6:30, and Norma will find a perfect spot for you in our choir, and you get to be part of our amazing Christmas show. Most of you have seen how the amazing productions we put on, and it really is a fun thing to be a part of that. So join up with that. I'm going to invite my friend Andy Lennox up here because, as most of you know, we're having our annual Thanksgiving potluck here in Fellowship Hall following our Thanksgiving sing-along service. And Andy here is our head volunteer who's running the whole thing. Andy Lennox, we bow.
Thank you. Do you guys think this shirt would look better on me than him? I found out why they put that string over there. It's for comic relief to see if I would trip over it on the way down here. So the holiday that precedes Christmas is Thanksgiving, and we do just an absolutely lovely potluck dinner here. We, in the past, have fed well over 100 people. There is an army of volunteers that show up, so I am here to invite you, to come and join us. It will be right after the service, and if you haven't been to the Thanksgiving service, come to that. It's at 11 o'clock on Thanksgiving Day. It's really a very, very beautiful service. And then immediately following that, we go to Fellowship Hall, and we eat together, and we pray together, and we sing together, and we laugh together, and we enjoy the fellowship that's named after Fellowship Hall. But it's a wonderful, wonderful service. So, couple of things. You know that it's right after the 11 o'clock service. We need volunteers. The way that it's going to look is Wednesday we'll descend on here. We will peel potatoes. So if anybody has a special talent for peeling potatoes, come along, bring your potato peeler. Thursday I have a special treat. There's actually a fellow that is going to join me and help me cook who is a celebrity chef. Maybe he's not been on TV, but he has cooked for Queen Elizabeth. And actually, yes, I swear to God.
We so appreciate you, and we have a time frame.
Okay.
Love you.
So, and donate turkeys. If there's any questions, sign up on the volunteer sheet. I promise I will call you. Thank you.
Okay.
Where's the shepherd's crook?
Thank you, Andy. One last thing, we are still collecting food to send up for a Thanksgiving meal to Wounded Knee. There is a checklist, a huge checklist. It's like yay big in the lobby that you can look to see the food that we need so we can send up a fantastic Thanksgiving meal. So if you have anything you'd like to give, please just bring it in anytime during the week or whenever.
Thanks, Mike.
My lovely wife.
Okay, so I'm so grateful to see all of your faces here. There are so many I have not seen in years, and I just welcome you all back. You know, you are a part of this family, and I'm glad you're here to celebrate Jack's memoir. This last January, we almost lost him to COVID, and so to be in this moment, I'm very proud to know that we got this memoir done, and he has worked so hard. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. So some things you should know: the book signing will take place right here in the sanctuary following Jack's talk. If you have a ticket for the book, please come down to this table after the talk. If you want to buy a book, come to this same table. Lunch will be served in Fellowship Hall, and you'll have to go through these doors because it's locked from the outside. There's tea and lemonade and coffee and wonderful food that we're going to have all together. And with no further ado, let's have a warm welcome for Jack Groverland.
I wish I could say I didn't do it, but I did. And most of you know about it already. I'm taking this off because it's too hot. I want to thank you all for turning out here today for this very different service. I actually need to begin by thanking all the people that made this day possible. Cintisha, of course, who you all know as the minister, who is really doing such an amazing job. And I am simply out of my mind happy and inspired by the work that she's doing here at Unity of Boulder. And I want to thank Mike Shadle, who I call the magician. He is the most amazing human being when it comes down to fixing anything. And he was there with me through the writing of this book. Occasionally, I had some glitches on the computer and had to have Mike come in and straighten things out. I want to also thank Heather Billou, our secretary, who you also know is one of the most amazing people. Taking care. You know, when you change the whole format and you do something different like this, everybody has to really pitch in a lot more time, hours, energy, and that's what they've all done. I want to be so thankful to them for what they have been doing to make this particular book signing service possible. I want to thank Mike Hayes, who is our newcomer. He's actually studying to go into the ministry himself. He's been an amazing, Steve Hayes. He's been an amazing asset to us as well, another technical genius. And I want to thank Sandy Chamberlain, who's a volunteer working with us through these days. I need to thank the wonderful volunteers who served as people that were editing the book. They edited the book, and I also had some people who were proofreaders. My proofreaders, Julianne Perrott, Bob Zink, Rihanna Gray, they did an amazing job for us on the manuscript, just giving some feedback on it that had us change a couple of things we think really were an advantage to the book. And two extraordinary people with extraordinary talents, and that would be Cherie Zink and Rihanna Gray and Terry Schuler, who edited this book and did such a beautiful, amazing job. Of course, when it comes down to thanking people, I wouldn't be standing here today. I would never have written this book, actually, if it wasn't for my wife, the faithful, most amazing person. And this church wouldn't be here either if it wasn't for Norma Groverland. For years and years, my family has been after me to write an autobiography because they know that my life has been an extraordinary passage filled with the most unbelievable, amazing, sometimes miraculous, sometimes terrifying events. And they said people would really want to know how you came out of the life you were born into to this life as the minister of unity of Boulder. So with enough prompting from them and also people asking me throughout the years, why did you choose to become a minister? Or how did you choose to become a minister? And I usually answered them by saying, I did not choose to become a minister. I was literally backed into the ministry by the events of my life. And you'll read about that when you read the events of my life, and you'll see the line that my life had to take. And so many extraordinary, improbable events that occurred that literally forced me to make changes that I wouldn't have ever made. And that's all in the book. That's, also part of the heart of this whole journey. And it's all spelled out in the book. When you read it, it will reveal a number of cosmic insights and one overall life-changing insight. And after you read the book, you'll come and ask me. I know you will all want to know how that could possibly have happened. But it happened. And I put that in the preface. There is not a lot of preaching or spiritual commentary on the events of my life in this book. After going through it as much as I did and having different people who proofread it, they said, you really save those spiritual commentaries for a separate book or booklet because this book is so phenomenal. People will really want to just get into the events themselves, speak a whole thing about your life and God and understanding. So that's why we have the book that we have today. Some of you have expectations. I know you probably have, that this book would be a glossy kind of spiritual book filled with spiritual ideas and truths that I probably shared a lot of over the years in the ministry. But as I said to you, what I will say to you today, and I'll say this in Fellowship Hall at the question and answer, I will say something I've never said at the pulpit before, ever, in all my 40-something years of ministry. But the book is just like that. And if you have any expectations about this being a glossy spiritual book that you can kind of thumb through, I want to just point your attention to the final sentence on the back cover of the book. These personal memoirs contain graphic descriptions of madness, mayhem, murder, and miracles. So with that in mind, I would like to have Marcy Baruch come out and share her beautiful voice with us.
I'm so proud of you, and I can't wait to read your book.
Thank you.
Kind friends all gathered round. There's something I would say. What brings us together here has blessed us all today. Love has made a circle that holds us all inside. Strangers are as family. Loneliness can't hide. You must give yourself to love. If love is what you're after, open up your hearts to the tears and laughter and give yourself to love. Give yourself to love. I've walked these mountains in the rain. I've learned to love the wind. I've been up before the sunrise to watch the day begin. I always knew I'd find you, though I never did know how. Like sunshine on a cloudy day, you stand before me now. You must give yourself to love. If love is what you're after, open up your hearts to the tears and laughter and give yourself to love. Give yourself to love. Oh, love is born of fire. It's planted like a seed. Love can't give you everything, but it gives you what you need. Love comes when you are ready. Love comes when you're afraid. It'll be your greatest teacher, the best friend you have made. So give yourself yourself to love. If love is what you're after, open up your heart to the tears and laughter and give yourself to love. Give yourself to love. Oh, give yourself to love.
I think maybe that's really what life in the end comes down to. Giving ourselves to love. I'm going to share with you a reading from the book, but I must start with the preface, and I advise you to read the entire preface before you start to read the book. All the events written about in this book happened. I know because they happened to me, with me, but not always because of me. This is not an autobiography per se, but more concisely, a compilation of the significant events that influenced my life from early childhood on. I have tried to write about most of the events from a perspective of who I was and how I thought at the time each event took place. There was no way to convey these events clearly and honestly without using a modicum of profanity. Looking back upon the experiences of my life has allowed me to see the humor in most of them, even those that were painful and tragic at the time. Certain events in my life did border on the miraculous, and to sustain the credibility of this biography, I have written each event in a matter-of-fact reporting style. Less significant events in my life have been left out in deference to those that had a greater influence on me. From the advantage of hindsight, it became clear to me just how many unanticipated, improbable, often unwanted events affected my life over the years. Others reading this book may also discover, as I did, that many of the unanticipated events in their lives smacked of a cosmic intrusion by an unseen power. The reading that I have chosen for this book signing took place when I was 15 years old. The chapter title is A Book Beating. Most of you, I'm certain, are not aware of what that might mean as I get to the place where it happened. But a book beating takes place sometimes in prison and sometimes, as it did, in reform school. And the way it takes place is the guard will hold a hardcover book like this in his hand with it pressed up against his forearm, and he will use that to beat the daylights out of you. And so the title of this particular chapter that I'm starting with is A Book Beating. And this is taking place when I was 15 years old. I was in reform school for only 6 weeks, but I met an older inmate who years later would be the instrument provided by the universe for another lesson on the path of life. The reform school was 2 red brick buildings, 3 stories high, with bars on the windows. Juveniles of every culture and color filled the rows of army cots in the sleeping room, which was about 50 yards square. Upon arrival, newbies were assigned a job on one of the work details in the kitchen, laundry, housekeeping, or grounds work outside on the wooded campus. When you weren't at work, you were either in the basement learning how to fix cars or how to refinish furniture. Otherwise, you were left to hang out in the makeshift library, which was the size of a basketball court with no baskets or bleachers. The library consisted of one small book rack containing maybe 50 books and magazines on learning a trade or books on war or some sports. The only other furniture in the room was a large rectangular wood table in the center with wood benches on either side. Though no inmates had anything in their possession except their uniforms, khaki coveralls with no pockets, there were hundreds of initials carved into the table and benches. A conundrum. The guards, all of them middle-aged Caucasian men, were dressed in plain clothes with no weapons except a police baton. There were no girls in that facility, and I didn't know of any reform schools for girls. There was a prevailing philosophy among the guards and generally among the police in that crime-ridden Burlington town adjacent to Parker, where I was arrested. The job of law enforcement is to convince young offenders that they really don't want to pursue a life of crime. Thus, in that reform school, any refusal to follow orders or any smart-mouth response was met with a good ass-kicking from the guards. There was a small chapel in which a Catholic priest performed Mass every Sunday in Latin. For whatever reason, only the priest knew. However, there was an incentive to attend Mass because those that did were permitted to hang out in the game room, where you could shoot pool, play ping pong, darts, checkers, cards, or listen to the radio all Sunday afternoon. Picture all these juvenile delinquents shooting pool and playing checkers while discussing the Mass, each of them fluent in Latin. It was at one of these game room gatherings that I met Cal Smith, a 17-year-old African-American who would be instrumental in providing a mystical lesson that I would receive years later. He was doing 2 years for selling heroin. Anglo delinquents never hung out with blacks or Latinos, but Cal was way cool. He was also a card shark who won a ton of dinner desserts and steaks from his fellow inmates. And he was funny. I taught Cal how to flip a coin so it always landed heads up or tails up as you decided. And he taught me how to stack a deck of playing cards to play poker. He and I were both fairly good pool shooters, and we talked endlessly about gambling, dope, pushing, and girls. I was still a virgin, and he told me that there is no real difference between black girls and white girls. White girls, he said, want to marry a rich white guy, and black girls want to marry a rich white guy, because there are no rich black guys. Cal and I became tight friends when one of the guards cornered me in the bathroom and said, "Why are you hanging out with that N-word?" The guard snapped. I'm not hanging out with him. I'm just shoot pool with him sometimes. The guard snapped again. "You take me for an a-hole? I see you sucking up to that N-word, you faggot." "I'm not a faggot. I never heard the last thing he said as he slammed me in the face with a hardcover book gripped tightly in his hand, that against and held against his forearm. This was one of the techniques the guards used to beat the living hell out of you and afterwards joke, "Hey, I never laid a hand on him, did I?" I wound up with a broken nose and a black eye before he finished beating me with the book. I never spoke to Cal again in reform school, but when he saw my face, he knew what had taken place. My mother visited me once a week, but my father was the one who picked me up when I had served my time. It was my second offense. I have vowed never to have a third. As part of my probation, I only had to remain in high school for the next year, which was my sophomore year. It was the same year I met Janice, my high school sweetheart. We were never full-on sweethearts, breaking up and making up so often that our mutual friends never knew if we were on or off. When we were off, we had no qualms about dating each other's friends, in secret, of course. Such was the accepted streetwise morality. My time after school was divided between Caputo's fountain shop, always crowded with teens, Happy Days TV style, and Nick's pool room. The only reason I hung out at Caputo's was because Janice worked there after school. Break-ins and petty crimes were a thing of the past for me. I had shifted my attention to gambling. I was so enthralled with this new vice that I took an after-school job in a bakery to earn money to play poker. In the beginning, I just played on Friday and Saturday nights in the back room of Nick's pool room. The stakes were usually 50 cents to $1. But as the game went on, the stakes were usually raised to $1 and $2. At these poker games, the deal rotated to each person at the table. The dealer chose the game to be played like 5-card stud or draw or 7-card stud. No wild cards allowed. I didn't have to cheat that often because the guys who came to play were easy marks, easy to tell and understand whenever they had a hand, and practically telegraphed their cards while sitting at the table. Still, I wasn't getting rich playing poker, even though I was more skilled at the game than the marks. I sometimes lost, having no one to blame but Lady Luck. To this day, I believe that Lady Luck, another ally of the meddling karma lord, plays a role in the grand scheme of things, offering lessons to saints and sinners alike. I'm now skipping ahead 2 years. I was 17 years old, a senior in high school, almost 6 feet tall, medium build, sandy-colored hair, worn with a slight pompadour wave in the front and a DA, duck's ass, in the back. I had been wearing store-bought clothes since my gambling career began. Levi's and polo shirts in the warm weather and dress pants, long-sleeve sport shirts and sweaters to school in the winter. I was also the owner of a black leather motorcycle jacket with studded epaulets and cuffs, my most treasured possession. I was still living in the dungeon apartment in Parker with my father, but I was more or less on my own. The marks at the poker games somehow grew brains, and the cards were honestly cut at least once and sometimes twice before each deal. Stacking the deck was just about impossible, and I had to rely upon my skill to read the face and playing styles of the other players to eke out a small financial edge. Lady Luck was seldom with me, forcing me to find other sources of income to support myself. Some of my busy life was also spent solo with one of the most adventurous chicks who hung out at the Caputo fountain shop. I was an atheist at the time, like most of the teenagers in the impoverished neighborhoods of Parker. As I said, I never gave any serious thought to the notion of karma or God. I had looked at all the evil and suffering in the world and accepted as fact that the world was a rat race and all of the advantages went to the biggest rats. The philosophy was proven out again when my 1949 bull-nosed Mercury was stolen by some rat during the coldest winter ever. I should mention that I had stolen a few cars in my wayward youth, but never in winter. It just isn't fair. It just isn't fair to steal a person's ride in winter weather. It was freezing when I stepped out of Nick's pool room. After a disastrous night of poker, I didn't have enough money for a cab, even if one would show up in this bad neighborhood at midnight. I lit a cigarette and began the long walk home, the freezing wind lashing away at my face and ears. Just about everyone was indoors. The street lights were out, the power lines probably downed by the ice. Walking past a row of tenement buildings, someone called out, "Hey, man!" I looked in the direction of the voice and saw a guy huddled in the doorway of a tenement building. Hey man, he coughed out, choked out. I could hardly understand him. You gotta smoke. It was dangerous, stupid, and too cold to stop. But the poor bum stepped out of the doorway and was only wearing an undershirt. So I unzipped my motorcycle jacket and grabbed a pack of Camels in my shirt pocket. When he limped toward me, I could see that he was an African-American man. I offered a cigarette, never taking my eyes off of his bony hands. He might have been a thug, but a close look at his emaciated body and arms convinced me that he was in no shape to mug me, even if he had a gun. He was coughing so hard, I thought, the last thing this sad bum needs is a cigarette. "Do you live here?" I asked. "Yeah," he croaked sarcastically. "I'm out here freezing my ass off because I have a warm, comfortable apartment upstairs." When I lit the cigarette, I glimpsed his face beneath a mop of matted hair that ran into a knotty beard on his face. That's when I saw the scar on the bridge of his nose, which triggered my memory of Cal Smith in reform school. I lit my lighter again to make sure, and I said, Calvin Smith?" Coughing out the words, he said, You a cop?" "No," I said, "I'm Will Arnold, Arnie, from Union Hill, the reform school." "Union Hill." He coughed, struggled. "I don't know any Union Hill." "The reform school," I said, "on Union Hill. It's Arnie." Coughing again, violently. "You know me?" "Yeah, Cal, we did time together on the hill. Shot pool and conned the fools." "Yeah, cool," he coughed. "Can you score some horse?" Horse was street slang for heroin. The more common name for the drug was smack. "No, Cal, I can't score any horse." "You got weed, right?" He coughed out and coughed again before I even answered. "No, man. Do you remember me?" Yeah, now I remember a Union something. I forgot the teacher's name. No, Cal, it was reform school. Look, man, I'm freezing my ass off. I need a hit. More coughing. I knew for certain he was my reform school friend, but I also knew he didn't know me anymore. You need to get your ass into a hospital, Cal, I said. Been there, Mommy, he said sarcastically. Come on, there's an all-night diner a few blocks from here. I'll buy you a hot meal. Fucking food! I need a goddamn fix! I can't help you with that, Cal. Lend me 30 freaking bucks. Just need a ride, one ride on the horse. I tried several times to get him to walk with me. Where? I didn't know, but someplace warm. Maybe my dungeon pad, a diner, where I could get him a bowl of soup or something. But he wouldn't walk, said his feet were frozen. They probably were. I tried to get him to remember me, but somewhere over the years, his addiction had erased every trace of me and just about every trace of him. I was too cold to hang out any longer. I gave him my smokes and $7, all the money I had on me. I gave him a parting knuckle rap on the shoulder, and I headed home. I got about a block away before I turned around and ran back to him. He was standing in the doorway with his eyes closed, his cigarette lying lit at his feet. I removed my motorcycle jacket and helped his cold, stiff body into it. It was like helping a corpse into a body bag. He opened his eyes just once and said, "Thanks, man. Thanks." I walked away, then trotted more than 10 blocks through the freezing night to my dungeon pad. But I never felt cold. I was mind blown on a new high, a weird feeling of heartfelt concern for Cal and for all the other bums freezing to death in doorways, rolled up in cardboard, or hiding in the bus station bathrooms to keep warm. There was no homeless shelters that I knew of back then. My euphoric feeling of brotherly concern only lasted through the night. The next morning, I had thoughts of rushing to the tenement complex and getting my motorcycle jacket back. Still, I didn't, because whenever I thought about giving Cal my jacket, it triggered just a trace of the good feelings I experienced the night before. Marcy, Baruch. Is Marcy here? Okay. She's probably going by the old schedule, expecting to come on much later. But in deference to the book signing, this is how much we wanted to do. And that is why I took the hook that I had shared with you, that I would speak to you about something I'd never said at the pulpit, and I moved that into Fellowship Hall for the luncheon because I didn't want to draw out a long time for the book signing, which is going to take some time before we get in there. And if we can find Marcy, she's going to sing a song that kind of sums up what I shared with you in this particular text.
The road is long, with many a winding turn that leads us to who knows where, who knows when. But I'm strong, strong enough to carry him. He ain't heavy, he's my brother. So on we go. His welfare is of my concern. No burden is he to bear. We'll get there. For I know he would not encumber me. He ain't heavy. He's my brother. If I'm laden at all, I'm laden with sadness that everyone's heart isn't filled with the gladness of love for one another. It's a long, long road from which there is no return. While we're on the way to there, why not share? And the Lord doesn't weigh me down at all. He ain't heavy. He's my brother. He ain't heavy. He's my brother.
All right, as you know, this is kind of a really different thing to do on a Sunday, but we all agreed to do it, and I will probably go broke for having done it. I said that anything that we don't take in, we said just put a couple of baskets in the back. If people want to make an offering, okay. If they don't, I'm going to make up whatever we usually get on Sunday at both services. That's fine. And so now I'm going to turn it over to this gentleman here who's been such a help to me and such a genius when it comes down to getting the book out there, getting it published, and finally he's going to remain a genius as he's moving us now into marketing this book. This is Bob Castellino.
I hope you've enjoyed the readings this morning that Jack gave from excerpts in the book. For me, they're tremendously poignant hearing him read them one line at a time as opposed to going over every letter, comma, and period to make sure it's in the right place. But this morning, as we close, Jack will be down here. So if you've purchased a book in advance coming through the door or you haven't had it signed yet, Jack will be signing all the books. And if you have a luncheon ticket, After we're done with the book signing, please come around. We'll be joining you for Q&A at that time. All of those of you that are online, in the description that you see online, you can purchase a book at the link there. Thank you for coming this morning, and please come on down. Have a great Sunday.